Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so listening to Trevor Lane this morning, as I often do, talk about the Zach LaVine contract, and we've had rants about that particular piece in Chicago coming off a knee injury. He was so close to being traded to Detroit, found out he was going to be in Detroit, and decided to have a knee surgery done right before that trade was finalized, which is another reason why people need to understand why your GM's not going to be honest with you about being traded somewhere. You look at a situation like that and see how the truth could have potentially been held from Zach LaVine and effectively got his horrible contract somewhere else. But instead, he forced himself into an injury situation that allowed for him not to be traded. Excuse me. Um, if I'm a negotiator on the other side of the table trying to trade for Zach LaVine, I'm definitely bringing that up as an excuse to not pay full price for him on top of the other reasons. He just may be insubordinate. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to come in and create problems. It just means that I can tell you that I think he may, so I'm not going to pay price for it. These are the type of things that can be used against you in negotiations. And one thing that I'm definitely going to demand is picks, not a pick, picks. I know that Trevor was saying a first rounder. No, I want two for that albatross of a contract that's anchoring the Chicago Bulls to the ground and keeping them from effectively being able to trigger their rebuild. I think that contract is stuck in Chicago like cold weather. I really do. I don't think anybody's going to trade for that thing. I don't think anybody is going to see that as something to take on unless it's the Lakers deciding that through the timeline that they're on, they need to trade for a superstar. But even in the event they decide they look at Zach LaVine as a superstar, him coming off the knee injury / surgery, whatever that was, doesn't allow for us the confidence of being certain of who he's going to return as. I don't have the confidence that he's coming back the same player. I don't have the confidence that he's going to be greater in LA than he was in Chicago based on the injury history there, coupled with his issues in the play-in tournament that we've talked about, him not playing very well the last time we saw him in a playoff-like situation. So when you consider all the problems we've had with D'Angelo Russell's reputation as a non-playoff player and the trouble we've had trying to trade D'Angelo Russell, I'm essentially bringing myself another D'Angelo Russell on a much more expensive contract. Why am I going to do that willingly, if not for the attachment of other assets that make me better? Not to mention that me trading for Zach LaVine means that I have to give away Rui Hachimura, a player that I'd rather not move on from, whose absence may potentially create a different problem, in a sense that he's one of the main guys that you could bring in if LeBron James goes down. It has comparable size and can continue to do strong man things at the power forward position. You move that piece, bring in Zach LaVine, now you need that piece if LeBron goes down. And then you could talk about moving on from another salary match. Probably Gabe Vincent, of whom I'd be happy to move on from, but that's what it would be for us to make the salaries match. So I'm giving up Rui Hachimura, a starting player that I likely like to keep. I gave up like 4 and 5 second-round picks to get him from the Washington Wizards. He's not disappointed me. I want to keep him on the team, and now I got to throw him into this Zach LaVine contract situation that personally I don't think anybody in the NBA wants at all. You know, Zach LaVine, nice player when he's healthy, but we haven't seen him healthy in a while. Nice player, but in the regular season. Nice player, but doesn't play defense. Nice player, but doesn't particularly facilitate the basketball. Like, these are like, you know what I'm saying? I don't see a reason for me to be giving up a piece like Rui, who I know has value in the market. When I look to make moves, people have no problem taking him back in most situations. Now I'm bringing myself Zach LaVine. If I try to retrade Zach LaVine, what can I actually get for him with this contract attached to him? Well, the answer is, if you pay attention to what's going on in Chicago, absolutely damn nothing. Obviously, they can't move him. So the market doesn't like Zach LaVine's contract. The market likes Rui Hachimura just fine. Rui Hachimura is a productive player on a what's considered a good contract, so long as he continues to play as well as he has. Zach LaVine is on a bad contract and hasn't played much basketball over the last 3 years. So like, why am I looking at that as a decent salary exchange? It's not. I'm taking a cost-effective, positive asset, and I'm turning it into a overpaid anchor. And the excuse is that I'm bringing myself a third star to help the Lakers win, but I'm depleting myself of assets that make us a more strong basketball team. So I can bring in a guy who potentially played 35, 40 games if things go completely wrong. I don't have any desire at all to identify Zach LaVine as a third star under these circumstances and with that contract. He's not a third star. He's an anchor that somebody's desperately trying to get rid of. That's what he is. And for those who think he makes his team better, not with the subtraction of what is going to be required to move in a direction to get him. The stuff that you're getting rid of, Rui Hachimura, is a big power forward who gives you LeBron James insurance. You need that because LeBron James is going to be 40 years old in December. You need to expect LeBron James only plays about 50 games this season. You remove his main backup and you bring in a brittle shooting guard that's going to anchor your books for the next 3 years in this apron era where it's already hard to make moves. You're stuck with that. And as LeBron James ages into next year or decides to move on, you got Zach LaVine and Anthony Davis. And Zach LaVine ain't going to be on the floor if history tells us anything. But he's definitely going to be on your books, keeping you from being able to get all the talent you need. As is, we have a hard time completing this team because we need a center. Now, right now, the way things are set up, you can move Rui Hachimura if you want to get a piece. You can move, you know what I mean, Gabe Vincent attached with Rui Hachimura to get a piece. You bring in Zach LaVine, you ain't going to be able to move at all to get any pieces because ain't nobody going to want that Zach LaVine contract. When you start talking about making salary moves and stuff like that, Zach LaVine's contract goes up from here. It's going to continue to increase in price, but not value. So for me, it's like, there's no way in hell I'm taking that contract from Chicago. You're going to have to give me more than what is expected to be reasonable in regards to trading for that player in order for me to see that as something I'd be willing to do. One first-round pick ain't enough because that's an anchor. That's going to keep me from being able to get better for the next 3 years. And I don't expect him to be on the floor playing very well as is. So that's like double the trouble. If I thought he was going to be as productive as people think Zach LaVine is going to be, I'd say one pick. But I can make the argument that I expect him not to be on the floor at all and not play well when I need him the most in the playoffs. So that's going to cost you another pick. On top of that horrible contract that's going to keep me from being able to move around. I'm not trading AD, I'm not trading LeBron James, and I'm not going to be able to trade Zach LaVine. So what the hell am I doing? Like, what are we doing? Whoever advised the Lakers they should trade for Zach LaVine needs to see my video and come up with reasonable stuff that can paint a picture that's a lot better than what it is I just painted. Because this, you talk about nailing your ceiling closed. That's exactly what bringing in Zach LaVine does. You're capping yourself off as most definitely not good enough to win a championship in the LeBron James, Anthony Davis era. That's what you're doing. You bring him in and you ain't gonna be able to get better. And whatever Zach LaVine gives you is just gonna have to be good enough. That's what it is. And you slap him next to Austin Reeves and hope for the best, for which neither one of them playing any defense. And you ain't got no Rui Hachimura. So all them points that Zach has given us has to be subtracted from the production that you would think Rui would provide. Because Rui's not going to be here to do that. You see what I'm saying? So that means you're putting more pressure on people like Christian Wood, more pressure on people like Jared Vanderbilt, as to which Vanderbilt's piece means more to you now meaning that when it's time to repay him, negotiate with him, you don't have as much leverage with Jared Vanderbilt, because now it's like, well, you need the power forward, you need the body, so pay me all this money. You know what I'm saying? That's what Rui does provide, is insurance for other players at that position. You know, now it's more pressure on some of the young guys to step up and play better or play out of position. So it's like you're having a hard time getting bigs as is, and you're going to throw Rui Hachimura in this trade to get Zach LaVine, another shooting guard for which you don't need, and you're going to subtract like 35 points, 40 points worth of talent just to make this happen? Because let's not forget, it's going to be required that you either move Gabe Vincent, of whom if I'm Chicago I'd rather not have, or the expiring contract of D'Angelo Russell, whom is where all those points are also coming from. So now you're moving Rui and D'Lo potentially to get Zach LaVine. So every point that Zach LaVine provides is going to be subtracted in the trade that you're sending out. That's Zach LaVine's production right there, D'Lo and Rui's points. And like I said, Zach ain't playing no defense. Zach ain't rebounding. So really, you're just exchanging the points for points and bringing in a significantly worse asset in doing so. It makes no sense. It's 0 sense. Just so people can provide the guise of saying we have 3 stars. You don't have 3 stars. You have an incomplete basketball team that's a lot less strong and like a lot more fragile. That's what you have. You got Bron, who's 40 years old, AD, who has had his injury issues and a reputation for being fragile, and then you bring in Zach LaVine, who has a reputation for being fragile, doesn't play well in situations, and contract has exploded to the high heavens to which nobody wants. Like what am I doing? What am I actually doing? So people can say we got 3 stars. If it doesn't equate to you actually being good enough to win, then it's not a plus. It's a negative. And if I got to give up stuff that ultimately makes me a fuller basketball team to get it, then what is it actually doing for me in a positive light? Honestly, it's a nice lie to sell your fans that you have a really, really, really good super team. But it actually equates to your team not being very good at all. No, absolutely not. There's nothing about that Zach LaVine contract or player that we should want at this point. Nothing at all. He's going to have to come back on the basketball floor and prove that he's worth $40 million a year for the next 3 years. That's what he's going to have to do. And until I see him come back on the floor and convince me of that, which I don't think he can do, based on a couple of factors, including the fact that even if he comes back and plays well for a couple weeks, that ain't telling me what's going to happen over the next 3 years. So I don't see him being able to do that. And then furthermore, in the playoffs, if he don't play no better than he has when I've seen him play, what the hell do I want him for, even if he's on a good contract? He has to be on a great contract for me, personally. So, I'm out. I'm 100% out on Zach LaVine's contract unless Chicago's attaching stuff to him that they have no business attaching to him. Period. 2 first-round picks. Or Montes Buzelis and Kobe White. Like, I'm taking the good stuff. I don't care about Chicago. I don't think Chicago, with all due respect to their front office and their fans, I don't think Chicago care about Chicago, because if they did, they wouldn't keep doing stuff like what they've been doing. Pat Williams contract for 5-year deal. Pat Williams ain't done nothing at all that should have garnered him getting a deal like that. I'm just being honest with you. He's not developing correctly, and they paid him. You got this Lonzo Ball contract that, they would probably be wise to try to move on from. It's an expiring contract. They got the Zach LaVine contract, which, as I just described, is what it is. You know what I'm saying? They let DeMar DeRozan move on for really not a great return. If I'm thinking correctly, I don't think they really got a whole lot there in return for him. It's like their rebuild cannot begin until they start moving on from Zach LaVine contract, and I'm not going to allow them to start that rebuild without giving me first round picks. You see what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. I'm not taking that contract to help you effectively start that rebuild unless you take from that rebuild and give me something that's worth having. Because that Zach LaVine contract is a lie that I'm not going to be able to sell to my savvy fans. I'm not going to be able to do it. And one first round pick is not enough. It ain't. It's not. So that's really what it is, man. They're going to give me Buzelis. That's what they're going to do. They're going to give me Buzelis. I'm taking Zach LaVine, I'm taking the first round pick, and I'm taking the guy you just drafted. And if I'm Chicago, of course, I'm not going to do that. So that's really what it is. Like I said, that contract is stuck in Chicago like cold weather, man. It's going to be 106 degrees in Chicago before that move gets made. I tell you the truth. VDL 44. I thank you all for watching.